Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session as part of Circular City Week. I'm Kate Daly. I'm a managing director at Closed Loop Partners, which is an impact investment firm based in New York City that focuses on the circular economy. And I lead our Center for the Circular Economy, which is a research and innovation hub that supports the transition from our current take, make, waste linear economy to a circular one where our resources are regenerative and kept in play. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be moderating our session today, which is hosted thanks to Mebel, Transforming Furniture, and the Sustainable Furnishings Council, and many thanks to them for organizing the session. Before we kick off with our panelists and the Q&A for today, I'd like to introduce Natalie Nolte, project manager at the Danish Clean Tech Hub, and she's going to welcome us and say a few words about Circular City Week.
Thanks so much, Kate, and hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining in on this session. At the bottom of our hearts from Circular City Week, the team and Danish Clean Tech Hub, we're so thrilled to have so many participants in all the events being hosted during this week. The week is about transforming the power from knowledge to implementation, and great partners like Mebel also show that this is something that we can together do. The creation of innovation and sharing of the information as well is all about what Circular City Week does for everyone and for our partners, of course, and the participants. So thanks again to our partners, and then I'll let it kick back to you, Kate, and take off with this great event.
Great, thank you, Natalie, and really thrilled to be part of this week and many more events still to come. So I encourage everyone to take a look at the schedule and sign up and participate in all of the additional panels. But for today, I'm delighted to be here to explore challenges and opportunities for circularity in furniture. And I know that all of us have been spending a lot of our time in our homes over the past year and have had the opportunity to think more about the ways in which design impacts our lives and the intersection between comfort and functionality and beauty that furniture provides. Such an important area, and I think the intersection with circularity and the innovation that we're seeing in emerging business models, whether it's the sharing economy or other approaches, have been really exciting. And so today, with this amazing group of panelists, we'll talk a little bit about what's the leading edge in circular solutions in furniture. How do we grow circular practices in this sector to scale? And really thinking beyond the product to social equity issues. How do we have an inclusive and accessible approach to circular furniture as we attempt to go to scale with these amazing new models and new ways of buying, using, and inhabiting the furniture in our lives. So I'm so happy to be joined by our esteemed speakers today, which include Whitney Francis Falk, who is the founder and CEO of Driggs. Pia Huusfelt is the business leader of circular economy, transformation and innovation with the Ingka group of IKEA. Cisco Pinedo, co-founder and CEO of Cisco Brothers and co-founder and board member of ReFoundry. And Simone Rustanji, former COO and current strategy and operations consultant with Mebel, Transforming Furniture. And I'd like to ask that all of you in the audience, I encourage you to use the chat function within the webinar to ask your questions. I'll be asking questions of the panelists, and then for the remainder of the session, we'll turn it over to a Q&A, and I'll be able to see your questions in the chat. And so let's kick it off with, I'll ask each of you on the panel to talk a little bit about what your company is doing and how you're incorporating circularity into each of your companies. And Whitney, why don't we start with you?
Amazing, awesome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Pleased to be here. My name is Whitney Francis Falk, and I created Driggs. ZZ offers contemporary and collectible furniture for rent as well as for purchase. And so we partnered with 12 American design firms, one of which happens to be Cisco Brothers. And we also feature furniture that is either 3 weeks old to 300 years old. And the reason being is because we truly believe that furniture, when made well, is the most sustainable product out there. And we're so pleased because ZZ Driggs is a platform in the sharing economy, this burgeoning industry where our business model is entirely predicated on the furniture lasting for as long as possible. And again, when furniture is made well, we can all share in it. It's why antiques exist. It's why vintage furniture exists. So we are the only platform in the world that offers high quality furniture for rent on demand. So furniture when you need it for as long as you need it. Thanks again for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation.
That's great. Thank you, Whitney. And Pia, can you share some more about your work?
Yeah, hi, my name is Pia and I'm from IKEA, which I think most of you will know because we are a global retailer in furniture. I work for Ingka Group, which is the part of IKEA that is the retail business. So we are the biggest IKEA franchisee. We are in 30 countries or markets. Millions and millions of customers. We actually have 700 million visits in our stores yearly. We have 3.6 billion visits on our web, and we are global. So in Ingka Group, we are meeting and serving customers through our network of stores and digital touchpoint and services. Myself, I lead an innovation team where we are passionate about finding out what happens with the things that we already have, that is already produced, because it's as important from a circular point of view that we're looking into how can people acquire in a smarter way, so get access to furniture, but also how they care for the things they already have to prolong the life of products, but also enabling people to think in new ways of passing on, so we secure a longer life of what already exists. So that's what we are innovating around in Ingka Group when it comes to circularity. So creating business models for the future. I think that's our aim. We I could mention that we have said that our CEOs or country managers in the markets, they should also be CSOs. So we really take this seriously. So they also have full responsibility on the CEO level to take all these things into their work. And we work along the full value chain in IKEA with circularity. So also from product design, 100% products by 2030 is ambition, only new renewable and recycled materials by 2030, and we will join forces with others. And then we are working on the things that I'm representing today that we probably will touch later. So I will leave it for that. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Pia. And Cisco, can you tell us a little bit more about Cisco Brothers and ReFoundry?
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Cisco Brothers, Cisco Home, it's a company that was started by my wife Alba and I in 1990, and we are a sustainable furniture company. We started the company from the day one. Our dream was not to take away from our ecosystem, and we started planting a tree from day one when we started producing furniture. Later on, we became one of the first companies to use only FSC certified in all our products, and that is still present, and using also reclaimed wood that is also FSC certified. And we were also the first company to start our furniture line Inside Green, which is a product that is 100% organic, and we did that in collaboration with ABC Home and Carpet in New York, and we're very proud to be in that place. Actually, right now, in a little town outside of Austin called Round Top, which is the capital of the antique fair, and I'm proud to be here because this is the place where a lot of the furniture that we use ends up. And what I like is I like to come and rescue some of those amazing pieces and be able to bring them back to the marketplace. We buy a lot of reclaimed wood here and a lot of raw material that normally would go to waste. When it comes to ReFoundry, ReFoundry was co-founded by Tommy Safian and myself, and it's a nonprofit organization that focuses on the criminal justice. And what we do is we train people that's coming out of the criminal system to teach them how to be makers and entrepreneurs. And we go to the level of just going in the streets and picking up lumber from construction sites, working with people that doesn't know what to do with their furniture. And we take it to the shop. We teach our participants how to make something out of those raw materials, or how to give a new life to that product. And then we take our participants to the flea markets and teach them how to sell them themselves directly to the end consumer. And our participants come is normally formerly incarcerated people that have been in the criminal justice. Therefore, by exposing them to be makers and be able to sell to the end consumer, it not only that makes them feel like they're no longer part of the problem, or they don't longer feel like they're being looked at someone that has been a problem in society, but they see them as makers. And we're very proud to be able to participate in that ecosystem in society. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Cisco. And Simonel, can you tell us a little bit more about Mebel and how you're incorporating circularity into your business model there?
Yes, happy to do that. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be on this panel with all these amazing panelists, and it was really great to hear about what everyone is doing and how they're incorporating circularity into each of their companies. So Mebel Transforming Furniture it's a very young company. We're new. We've been around for about 3 years now. And we're an organization that wants to bring gorgeous, high quality reclaimed furniture into the forefront of the market. And because we really believe that this type of furniture, it could play a pivotal role in a transition to an economically and environmentally sustainable future. So you can see like circularity is at the core of our work, because we do work with, we do want to champion products that are made from reclaimed materials. In fact, our mission is to redefine reclaimed and champion the next generation of furniture with values. We started out as a furniture retailer, and so at the time, all our products were made from reclaimed materials, and that's kind of how we centered circularity into our model. Since the pandemic has hit, we have been re-evaluating our role as a retailer, and we are sort of rethinking how we can further, sharpen our focus on that mission of championing. And so we're in the process of figuring that out, but we do know that championing sustainably made furniture will always remain at the heart of what we do. And one of the things we're really excited about is busting that conventional perception of what reclaimed furniture is and what that reclaimed aesthetic is. And in the short time that we've been around, we've seen that our customers are really excited about that. They get excited that they can have, they don't have to make a trade-off between good design and their values. And so that's us in a nutshell.
Thanks, Simonel. And I think that point about customers and their response is such a good one. And I think in circularity in general and in sustainability, we want to be driving toward a world where sustainability and affordability are not mutually exclusive. And so I'd love to hear from each of you how your interactions with your customers have been. What resonates with your customers in terms of the approach that you're taking, whether it's, Whitney, as you noted, within rental, Pia, taking care of what we already own, Cisco, the idea of organic sourcing and repurposing. What are the ways that this resonates with your customers and that you see that story driving your business model?
Maybe I should start, or oh, is it Whitney? Sorry.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, certainly. So I think we all recognize that high quality furniture usually has a larger price tag. And for our audience, which is largely a millennial metropolitan audience, with that, we're seeing the rental economy really take over a large part of consumptive habits, right? So what otherwise might be a rather expensive product, if we can all share in it, then the cost comes down for everyone. And I get so jazzed about the idea of collaborative consumption, because at its heart, it's such a beautiful business model across so many different industries, because again, it's all predicated on goods that last. And so I think that's the direction that we're certainly going in. I mean, when we look at even what the most recent IPO of Poshmark, which was one of the most astoundingly successful IPOs recently, it's all goods that are being shared or reclaimed or in the secondary market. And so I think this is only an area that's going to continue to expand, and it's such a welcomed opportunity because it's at its heart inclusivity, and it's at its heart sharing, and it's at its heart long-lasting goods. So I'm optimistic, and I think it's a solution for obviously an industry that urgently requires change.
Pia, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, and I totally agree with Whitney, and or see the same, that also having hope. And yeah, I just wanted to share that we have done consumer insights in 17 markets, 300 in-depth interviews with people all over the world. And some years ago, it was not as clear as it is now that really wanted to make a change. We really hear that people want to take part of the change and do something differently. They don't talk about circularity as a thing, but they talk about value of things, and they don't want to be wasteful, and all that taps into these thinking. So they name it, but differently. But what we also see from a global scale, from another kind of furniture approach with more low cost furniture, is that that people actually really want to take part of it, but they don't know how to. So it's more about lacking the skills, the know-how, the tools, space, time. So if we can help them in creating a circular mindset in their life, or way of acting in their life, then they are super open. So I really see the same way, that there's a hope, and people are really willing and are so close. We are on a tipping point of having a bigger movement. That's also what we feel or see from our work to really move this now. But they need help, and that's what hopefully we all here in the panel, with different means and with different possibilities, can help, so people can take action, so it becomes reality.
And Cisco, are you seeing this tipping point in your work as well?
Yeah, for us, what I have noticed is that the appreciation for high quality furniture is growing. One of the things that I'm very proud of is that I was in the flea market with my daughter a couple years back, and one of our leather club chairs that I did 30 years ago was at the flea market. And I told my daughter that was one of our chairs, and she couldn't believe it. And so she goes and lifts up the cushion, and she sees the tag that is our product. So she asked how much that chair was, and they were asking about $2,400 for a leather chair that we made 30 years ago, and we sold that chair for about $950 back then. And that, to me, is the beauty when you buy something that is well made and that is using good materials. The lifetime of that product is gonna be around for a long time. My estimation that chair is probably gonna be around for another 60, just the way we made it 30 years ago. So I believe that people are getting more conscious and being smarter. Millenniums, I see. It used to be, when I go to the flea market, it was just a bunch of old people hanging out at the flea market, and now it's full of millenniums. And you see them with the chair in their bags and talking about how they're going to just paint it or give it a new look or reupholster it or strip it. And I just feel like the product that end up instead of in the landfills is ending up in the flea markets and antique fairs, and people are very engaged. We no longer a culture of modern or tradition. We are one big global, culture that we're embracing everything that is around us, and I really enjoy that, and I'm very proud of us as a society, and particularly young people that are embracing all kinds of products and taking advantage and buying it for very little, but products that are still very good and they can serve us well.
Mm-hmm. And I would add to that at ZZ we talk about how we give a lot of thanks to the world of fashion. Fashion and furniture are almost like cousins. They're so closely related. And we've all heard the term fast fashion, and certainly that's starting to emulate into the world of furniture, fast furniture. Of course, it's real and it exists. But the reason why we give so much thanks to the world of fashion is because fashion really ignited that conversation on sustainability. I think there was that headline 3 or 4 years ago about a certain retailer was sitting on $4 billion worth of unsold polyester merchandise. That can't be easily repurposed. And then people started to look into, okay, polyester, what does that mean? Well, all right, it's a long chain polymer derived from petroleum, literally petroleum, touching our skin. So that conversation really commenced a dialogue that has made the conversation around sustainability as it relates to furniture that much more accessible, and gives that much more of a foundation for all of us to understand, okay, what can we do to right this wrong? And it's so cool that, like, in this conversation, we're talking about everything from the behemoths of IKEA to the flea market world, because that is the world where everyone is finding furniture and everywhere in between. So I think there's a lot of optimism, and I think there's a lot more solutions that are coming out now in a much greater pace than 3 or 4 years ago. Thanks for letting me jump.
Whitney, it's interesting that you use the language of to right a wrong, because it's a question of what is drawing customers to these new business models, to circular furniture. And Simonil, I know you mentioned that at Mebel, you're looking at reinventing the concept of your work in reclaimed furniture. Can you talk a little bit about your customers, and as Cisco mentioned, these shifting demographics and a sort of more inclusion? Is there a sense that customers are interested in these amazing designs because they're righting a wrong, or are they coming more from a design perspective? How do we measure where circularity is a driver for all of your customers?
Yes, I think that's a great question. And I agree with, what's been said by the other panelists. We are seeing a shift, and we saw that more anecdotally, through our pop-up retail store at Union Square, and through our Instagram following. We see these customer conversations, and what we've come to realize is there are 3 kinds of customers. So at least from our experience, there are those for whom sustainability is a must-have, and then there are those for whom sustainability is a nice-to-have, and then there are those who don't really care about it, right? And fortunately, what we saw is a lot of our customers or a lot of our followers sit in that nice-to-have category. So while it's not the must-have, but if they find a beautiful piece of functional furniture at the right price, then having it be sustainable is a great perk for them, and they're excited about that. But clearly, like, other factors are actually the drivers of those purchasing decisions, and sustainability is the cream on top of everything, right? So that's what we saw in our experience. But it was we were very positive about it, because we could see people walk into our store and get so excited that something was made out of an old barn or an old sugar factory. It was a point of real excitement, and they were really proud to take a piece home that had that story and that wasn't making a negative impact on the environment. And we really did see that come through in all our interactions.
Mm-hmm. And thinking about the enablers that support all of your business models, what have you been seeing on the supply side in terms of the resources that are available to make this shift? Pia, certainly IKEA around the world has shown tremendous leadership in take back and repair programs and resale programs. And the mechanisms of design for disassembly, all of the thought that needs to go into the design phase is so relevant there. Just as Cisco, Whitney, Simonil, you might speak of the supply side in terms of your access to the vintage and antique materials, or the raw materials that you need, and challenges that you've seen and access there. Anyone want to speak to these particular issues that are upstream of us?
Well, I would like to, talk about your comment about polyester. When we decided to get in this path of sustainability, we started with the lumber, and make sure that we were using lumber that it was coming from a good source, and that's how we ended up being an FSC certification. But we also started challenging our suppliers with fabric. The big bulk of our business is upholstery goods. So we just started by using only natural materials, and it was very limited. We realized that all we were ending up is with a little bit of cotton and not much color, and linen and a little bit of hemp and wool, and that was kind of the only resources that we had. Little by little, we started, challenging our suppliers and letting them know that, an organic duck is not going to be good enough for the consumer. So that's, we just started inviting them to participate and be able to look for organic dyes and natural dyes and vegetable dyes. And little by little, we've been moving the needle. Today, we are using some recycled polyester in some of our fabrics, but for the most part, 90% of all the fabrics that we use are either linen or cotton or wool or hemp, and a nice selection of organic fabrics and what we offer.
Yeah, it's incredible to see, and I think Cisco has definitely been the pioneer of this conversation and was talking about green production long before many of us were, certainly decades before. On the ZZ side, every designer, every studio that we bring onto our platform has to complete an application before we onboard them, before we purchase their goods for feature in the rental world of ZZ. And so that means largely looking at what type of materials are used. Are these recycled? Can they be recycled? Are they biodegradable? And also, all of our designers have to affirm that their products will last a minimum of 50 years. Many of them are guaranteed with lifetime warranties. The Cisco pieces are, for example. Many will outlive us, but at a very minimum, everything needs to last 50 years, as it can and should. That's the beauty of furniture, right? Again, I continue to say it, but that's why antiques exist and vintage furniture exists, because it can when it's made well. So on our end, it's really making sure that we're not just talking the talk, because greenwashing is real and it is a marketing technique at this point, but that we are walking the walk. And so that comes from the application process, that comes from us going through a B Corp certification process, that comes from us turning our corporate governance documents into becoming a public benefit corps, as we now are, so that we have a stake in the ground and we describe, hey, we're doing this for people and planet, and we are legally describing that we are building ZZ in that way. Our legal documents speak to that. So I think it's a fascinating time right now across so many different sectors, not just furniture, but fashion, of course, too, food, fuel, so many different areas. So I think the consumer is getting so much more of an education because they realize they're a part of the solution, and because quite literally our world depends on it. So it's so poignant that we're having this conversation today, because I mean, just looking at Google Trends and searches, I mean, the consumer is really becoming so much more knowledgeable about everything they bring into their home, and it was in some ways the silver lining of the pandemic.
Just to add what Whitney just said about the consumer becoming more knowledgeable, I feel like, so your original question is about the supply side. I think what we've seen is that the supply side is still nascent and it's still fragmented. I mean, it's growing and things are happening, but there's still a lot of work to be done. But there's a lot of positivity, because it looks like the demand side is going to be able to bring the supply side up to the mark, right? Like, because once consumers start demanding this and they want to see circularity, they want to see sustainability, the supply side is going to have no option but to meet that demand, and they're going to have no option but to do that authentically and efficiently, because consumers are just too smart today to accept greenwashing, right, beyond a point as well. And so that's what I mean. We see there are a lot of challenges on the supply side. I mean, for us, we don't make any of our furniture ourselves, right? We source it from different furniture makers, and even finding those furniture makers, it takes a lot of digging, because while there are a lot of them out there, their online visibility isn't necessarily great. So you have to really dig through the internet to find them, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. And similarly, their experience with the reclaimed material supply is that it's fragmented, and for them also it's a lot of time and effort that goes into sourcing those things. But But we feel positive that because of the customer pull and because of the demand side pull, like there is going to be a shift, and people are going to have no option but to jump on that bandwagon and meet that demand eventually in like an efficient and cost effective way.
So
I'm
true.
not a specialist in supply chain and material from our end, but currently, at least, I can say that in our current range, 60% of our range is already with renewable materials. Sorry, and 10% with recycled materials. So we are even in our scale really trying to do a lot here, and we have big ambitions, of course. So we are on our way. But with the middle class of 2 billion people soon coming into the middle class, they will request stuff and things. I think that's also interesting in this discussion. How about that scarcity of materials and supply in general? Because they will ask and demand things that we take for given today. So what we also see is in many mature markets, that's where you turn into vintage, and then suddenly used is becoming the luxury, and you're looking for that. But for instance, for us as a total other company that some of you like, we are here for the many. So we have to create a better everyday life for the many people, also with the low price, so everyone can afford it. And of course, that's super challenging in this discussion. And how can we secure all these materials, and knowing it's a scarcity, and yeah, soon we will be 2 billion more people actually asking and demanding for stuff. Also talking about Whitney, as you mentioned, fast fashion. I mean, it's the same. You can say challenge, which is super hard and or super interesting, because if you can also impact it, as I hope, and I see small signs that we will actually be able to impact this from our end, then it's also have a big scale and a big impact when a big, more global company actually can do some changes. So it's super interesting what happens with all of us, no matter what we're doing. It all contributes with different things. I mean, there's so many ends, but there's a lot in between where we really have to, have in mind that there will be a demand, and it's a big question, I think, for all of us.
Mm-hmm. And you know, it anecdotally, Pia, 2 years ago, I think it was in 2018, I literally told my friends and family, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, this is the biggest news. This is like the biggest headline that makes me, out of all headlines in the world, this is the one that makes me the happiest, was when IKEA announced that by 2030, you all would be completely circular. Is that still the plan? Is that still, are you all still on track for that? And does that include every country, every nation that IKEA services?
Yes, we are definitely on track, and it's still the ambition or the goal. So our commitment. So that is for sure. And on top of materials and product design, it is about services. How can we prolong the life of products? And we also, like you, looking into renting, leasing. How can you extend life of products by giving it many loops? Where we are now trying to see how that would work with office furniture as a first step for us to really encourage many lives. So yes, it's definitely still valid.
That's so great. That's wonderful news, because it also assumes then too that the glues and the resins that go into a lot of furniture construction, which is usually what prohibits furniture from being recycled, it also then assumes that you all would transition on from that too. So that's great. Any effect that you all do, of course, reverberates around the world. So, you know, keep hopefully up with innovation. Yes, we're all depending on it.
Yes. Yeah.
And Whitney, you raised such an interesting point, because I don't think it's necessarily that commonplace for people to think of the human health issues relating to the furnishings that fill our homes. And as we've seen with organic food, the link to human health and what we're putting in, on, or around our children is sometimes something that really can motivate customers to ask questions about where their purchases come from, and increasingly, in the case of our hope for more of a transition to circularity, ask the question of where will this go when I'm done with it. And And so just thinking about this question that Pia, you flagged of 2 billion new consumers who all want more stuff. How do each of you think about scaling your businesses, reaching more customers, and yet still keeping on track with maintaining healthy materials and sustainable sourcing as you grow and reach new audiences? What are the principles that you're bringing with you, or challenges that you face as you scale your businesses, and also perhaps increase the circular components and approaches within your business models?
Cisco here. One of the things that we have discovered in our process is, looking at kind of the direction that we're taking our company, is just focus on staying true to what we do, which is you don't have a choice. When you buy from us, you're going to buy something that is sustainable or is organic. And what we want to make sure is that the end consumer has that opportunity, because prior to that is no difference than organic foods. At one point, it was an anomaly. It was hard to find that unless you went to the farmers. Well, today we know that's good for us. So in the furniture for the home, I see it kind of the same way. I feel like we all deserve to live in an environment you can actually breathe inside your home. Your home's supposed to be your temple. So, if you cannot breathe in that place, and there's a lot of chemicals in your environment, that's that's not good in the long term for your health. So we feel like we, in this journey of challenges, is yes, the suppliers sometimes get discouraged because the industry doesn't move along. But I always remind people that us as consumers have full control, because we're the ones who pay for the goods. So I encourage anybody that is in the advocacy side, or anybody that is in the movement of sustainability, to just keep pushing in that direction, because and keep challenging our suppliers. And I do believe that the younger generation is pushing much harder and questioning and making sure that they want to know where the product was made, what was it made with, and who made it. And I do believe that we are in a good path. As we all know, in the industry right now, is not lack of orders, is lack of supply. The demand is very high, and the raw materials are hard to get today. So hopefully, we can keep pushing each other to get to a better place.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, for all of our international friends, and the EPA put out a report a couple years ago that described indoor air pollution was 2 to 5 times higher than outdoor air pollution. Astounding. And that's largely because of off-gassing materials. It's because of household cleaners. It's because of a whole swath of things. But again, it just points in that direction that we are all wisening up. And to Cisco's point, at ZZ, we talk internally about the 4 F's of sustainability. As juvenile as it might sound, it's a helpful resource. First it started with fuel, right? And then it was food, it's fashion, and now it's furniture. And again, I think the conversation has just sped up around how sustainability intersects with furniture. When we hear reports like indoor air pollution, or when we hear reports like in December of this past year, Metropolis magazine did a deep dive, and they discovered that it's believed interior design now accounts for 1/10 of global carbon emissions. And that's because of all the use and the wasted goods, all of our home refreshes, all of the disposable goods that we bring in. And so, when that headline hits, I mean, that hits hard. And then that just shows like, wow, we've got to wake up in terms of what we bring in even to our homes. And the last thing I'll say to that note is, we've been spending so much more time in our homes, of course, because of the pandemic. And so now we're just becoming so much more aware of what we fill our homes with. But even then, I think we all realize, like, okay, the mask that we put on our face, we don't want to put polyester masks on our face. We don't want to be breathing that in. So that in a way, it's all these different factors contribute to our larger knowledge about the goods we're using, the goods we're bringing into our homes, especially when we spend 90% of our day literally with our skin touching furniture. So it's a real revolution that's happening, and I think to the rest of the panelists' point, the consumer's asking for it, and so we have to meet them with those goods that they deserve and that the planet deserves.
And to both your points, Whitney and Cisco, certainly transparency is one tool that helps with this engagement and education of customers. Certainly in California, the red list, the mandate for more disclosure of the chemicals used or some of the materials, and in the US, that's certainly not common outside of California. And so there really is not much transparency at all. And when you ask these questions of some major furniture makers, they don't respond in terms of questions about red list if they're not mandated to disclose that. And so what do all of you think about the role of transparency in your supply chains and your business models as connecting customers who, as you know, right, that are used to asking these questions about their food, are starting to think about this with energy, and hopefully will start to think about it more with fashion. Where can transparency help furniture, help you have a sort of competitive edge over your competitors with transparency as a tool?
I think both Cisco and Whitney was onto it from what I mean. That I fully agree that consumers are really asking more and more of that. But I wanted to link that question into your question about the scalability, because I think it's to enable all this. Yes, it will be asked for and wished for and demanded towards us to have this transparency. Yes, to that, I feel that I'm really convinced that this is important with transparency and trust. And one way is one of the biggest enablers to really scale things is digital solutions. And how can you trace products? How can you know the content? Where is it? What happened with it last time? And so on. And so there is so many basic circular business models that needs digital enablement. So this is the biggest thing, actually, I think, to enable this, what we faced. And apparently we all hear that people are asking for this. And transparency is definitely one of them. And it's ironic because digital was also the reason why we started to consume so much, because it became so easy. So now we want people to consume less, also with digital capabilities. So it's a little ironic, but this is where the scaling comes in, is how we find ways of all these things we talk about, traceability and so on. And in many of the things we have spoken to consumers about solutions is also that, I mean, it's really important to have a trustworthy company, or that you actually trust people or companies. Otherwise, you will not believe in it, and it will you want it. I think it was you, Whitney, with greenwashing and so on. So it's also a balance about that. But definitely digital will enable this with transparency.
I think Pia is absolutely right, and I think digital is also the reason you have to be transparent, because in this world of social media, you just don't have a choice, right? Like, and your customers are going to call you out if they feel like you're being inauthentic, or if they feel like you're not being transparent, and so transparency is not optional anymore. It feels like that's truly the case, and it also feels like it gives you a competitive advantage, because if you're being transparent, if you're being authentic, then you're really connecting with your customers at a deeper level than just, okay, they're coming and purchasing and leaving, right? And we saw that a lot. Like, we saw when we were super transparent about the materials and super transparent about, where their pieces came from, the customers just loved it. They loved the story behind it. They loved the whole authenticity of who's making it, where it came from. And it comes with its challenges as well, right? Like, people asking questions about, okay, remnants of chemicals, and is this safe to put in my house? And as long as we were able to answer those questions sufficiently and in an authentic manner, customers were extremely happy, and we saw that it was really like it's the need of the hour right now, but it has to come hand in hand with authenticity, I think.
I know it's such a good point, because the customer is so curious. You know, there is an education, there should be resources, because the customer wants to know, they want to learn more. You know, it's so fascinating, because we look into social engagement and whatnot, and the most engaged posts on Instagram are those in the world of interiors, and it just shows you, like, my gosh, design is a real topic of conversation right now for so many reasons, but largely because of the pandemic. And you know, we always say at ZZ that furniture is almost utilitarian art. You know, it's like so easy to place with different design movements, and we use it. You know, whereas sometimes art can be a little bit more elusive to understand. So that all just points to that the consumer is wisening up to such a large degree, and that they are so curious, and they want to know about what the materials are. They want to know what type of wood species it is. They want to know, like, what influenced the design, what is the piece's origin story. They want to know about the designer themselves. It's just so cool, because I think also there's such a demand in people starting to make things themselves. So that's largely what is informing this new behavior too. So it's again just an exciting time for the industry.
Yeah. We see also in our stores where we have started to implement an extension of the Assist Corner, if you know that. We now call it a circular hub, but where people can get inspiration of giving new life, personalize it, upgrade, and somehow change maybe some things about the furniture so it can have a new life instead of getting rid of it. So it's really has shown interest already that more and more people actually want to keep the things they have and make the best out of it. So that's definitely growing. We also see that.
And I think there's such curiosity too about innovative new business models and new approaches, and seeing established companies try new things and seeing new companies emerge. And within the circular economy, we're in such a phase of experimentation, of figuring out what is interesting and engaging to a customer, what is profitable and at the same time sustainable. Can you each share a success story that you've had in going circular, and also something that flopped and that you really learned a lesson from that then shaped your circular journey?
I had one experience, you know, kind of right when we started offering organic furniture. There was this particular doctor who recommended us to their client because she was very allergic to all kinds of smells. And we were so happy that we were going to be able to provide that piece of furniture for her. So we made the product, we ship it to her house, and when the delivery company walks in to deliver the furniture, she goes, "You guys both using the deodorant. So you guys cannot come in, and not only you cannot come in, but you just contaminated my sofa." So they brought the sofa back, and she refuses to us to deliver the sofa because it was already been contaminated. And you know, the salesperson just wanted to keep that person their money back and call it a day. And I said, no, you know, let's look into it. I mean, that's a real problem. If she has issues with allergies, we should find out what happens to our product. So anyway, so we hired someone to come and do a testing on all the odors and the product, and whatever contents was there that it could affect her. So anyway, so we find this expert and came and did all the measurements and did all the testing. And the one thing that we found out through the process was that the air quality in our factory was cleaner than the air quality in LA at that day that he did the test. Anyway, we showed the lady the results, and she was satisfied. We just make sure that the guys that went to deliver the furniture back were not using any deodorant, and that was the end of it. So I thought that was a good way to kind of, just follow the lead of what the need of the customer is and where it will take you. And, sometimes, and for the most part, you're going to learn a lot about your customer and also about where your product stands at that moment.
Personally, I like it when people who are moving heavy furniture wear deodorant, but I can totally understand her concern. Anyone else want to share? I mean, often this success in this flop does come about because of the customer's reaction to it, and that's really what determines for us if something is a success or not. Other examples where you've experienced that?
Sure, I'll jump in. We've been open for 6 years, and we've been primarily servicing businesses. We strategically wanted to go first to helping out businesses because we thought it was too early for the consumer to be having the conversation around sustainable furniture. That being said, we launched this past year, a wild year. We launched to the residential consumer market. We had planned for a big launch this spring, this time last year for New York, for the residential consumer. And obviously the world changed, and it was inappropriate and unsafe for our team and for our audience, for us to open up to New York last April. So instead, we focused on geographies where it was much safer to surface. So that was in the Hudson Valley of New York, that was parts of Long Island, Connecticut, New Jersey. And what was really surprising to us was that there was an appetite for rental furniture in more rural areas. We think about rental furniture and we think like, oh, it's for cities, it's for where people have leases, it's where there's, lots of movement. And I think what we've found is that no, the consumer is curious about trying out furniture, about utilizing it in a temporary setting before possibly making that investment. So I think it shows that there's just a lot of demand for a whole new form of accessing and utilizing furniture. So to us, it's a success story, right? And it's successful because, again, our business model is entirely predicated on the furniture lasting for as long as possible, as furniture can and should. And then, in speaking about flops, the very first enterprise installation that we had, which was actually in LA at Hyperloop One, had these gorgeous side tables that were hardwood walnut, and on the inside there was one piece that was marble. I mean, marble is so beautiful. I think we all can admit, like, it's one of the most gorgeous natural materials out there. But of course, after just 1 week of use in a lobby setting at a next generation transportation company that had a lot of visitors, it got a nick in it. And so that was immediately the lesson to us, what are the learnings? A flop always has a learning, right? And so that was immediately a lesson of, oh, man, as gorgeous as marble is, we just can't use it in the rental world. We can't utilize it on the ZZ platform. So, you live and you learn, but again, the share economy is all built around durability at its core. The business models that I think can and will survive and will inspire their audiences, feature product that can and will survive a long time. And so it's a positive thing in all lessons, right?
I have an example from Russia, maybe, just to bring another flavor or another angle on this. Since we are mostly testing, as I said, so when I speak, it's about things that are in testing environment, because we haven't found the fully right solutions yet and deployed it all over and all that. But actually in Russia, we did also some consumer insights, and we also listened there and heard that people were actually conscious, as we have spoke about. So there's a movement behind the scene. But in Russia, the infrastructure for circularity is not in place. I mean, it's not built up for, the system is not built for being circular. But we heard that people actually were caring for the things and felt, as I said, that it has value. So the Russian organization did a test in taking back wooden furniture from consumers, saying, okay, we take it and we take care of it, and you just lean back and trust us, and then we will either donate it, or we we did a chip wood out of the wood, and we produced put it into our own production, and then the remaining parts we did for fuel for IKEA industries in Russia. So all the wood materials were actually used, and it created such a big interest for consumers. So they handed in 130 tons of wooden furniture suddenly, and it just shows. I think it's why I think maybe I thought I should share this instead of a more typical example. It's just this is a country where infrastructure and the system is not really supporting this way of thinking, but the movement of the people actually sometimes conquers and wins. And since we then said, okay, let's try, and we will take it back, and we will do something good with it, people actually came back. So now we will try in 2 more cities or cities in Russia. So this was in Moscow, but then also in St. Petersburg, and I think somewhere else. It's just, I just think it's a good example because it really shows that people are ready and really want to do something if it's facilitated or supported, so it's somehow convenient and can happen. Then they are actually willing to do it, and that's where the hope comes in again. And a real flop, we are testing so much, so there's a lot of ideas we have killed. I would say more. I would more say it like that. That has never come to the surface because we have killed them before it actually came into real test environments. So I cannot really share that fully.
I really love these stories. On our end, so because we're champions, right, and we're trying to like bring this field out in front of a lot of people, one of the real successes for us and what's been really exciting has been to see the response that we've been getting from people on our social media and those people who walked into our retail store when it existed at Union Square. Like in the past year itself, we've gone from 50,000 Instagram followers to 150,000 Instagram followers, and all our content is focused on beautiful furniture made from reclaimed materials. So we can see that that's really the draw. Like that's the content that people are excited about. And you know, Whitney, you said that interiors it gets such a buzz, and there's so much conversation around that, and we see that on our posts as well. Just people are so excited to see beautiful stuff and talk about it and get excited about it. And similarly, in our store, most of our customers loved what they saw when they walked in, and if the price was right and it was a functional piece, like the purchase was usually very easy for them, and they were very proud to take that piece home. So for us as a young company, this really, it's validating our hypothesis that people, they want to marry their values with good design, right? They want something that fits both those criteria. So that's been really exciting for us to see. On the flop side, or rather a challenge that we just unfortunately weren't able to solve for as a retailer, was the complexity of shipping. You know, we really tried to get like products shipped at a reasonable price within a reasonable time frame, and getting them to like arrive for the customers in one piece, and doing all of that without wasting too much packing material, without too much bubble wrapping and all of that. But it truly was a challenging process, especially as a young company. We tried blanket wrap shipping, we tried, you know, using less than truckload providers, but we saw issues with reliability and timing, and the kind of issues that would, you know, have potential negative effects on our relationships with customers. And unfortunately, we weren't able to solve for it in our short time as a retailer, like our year and a half. But I know I know there are solutions out there, and I'm hopeful that other people are able to solve for it, because it really is a big challenge within the industry.
And Simonel, that is a perfect transition as we shift into taking questions from the audience. And I encourage everyone in the audience, please put your questions in the questions section on the webinar. The first question is, how are some of you working to reduce waste and increase sustainability in shipping your furniture? So Simonel, jumping off from your point, does anyone want to share their journey and certainly the challenge of that waste reduction in packaging materials while you ensure the safety of the delivery?
You know, we're in the manufacturing of goods. So for us, one of the things that we have really focused on is to reduce waste. And So out of our leftover lumber, we make cutting boards. Out of our fabrics, we make aprons, napkins, bags, and whatever we can make to make sure that it goes to use instead of going to the, just to the trash. Of course, the biggest challenge is packaging materials for the furniture industry. We're all in the same boat, and unfortunately, we're not where we need to be, and that's probably one of our biggest challenges. When it comes to transportation, all we've done in our end is to, have our factories closer to our consumers. So now we manufacture goods in LA and we manufacture goods in North Carolina, and that's just to get closer to our customers. And that's kind of where we done the most progress, because it used to be only made in LA. So
Yeah, I'll jump on board there because ZZ offers rentals in New York City, and we have our own house trained delivery team for the rentals in New York, and then we ship pieces nationwide. So we work with a freight partner for nationwide shipments. And so on that end, we really took a hard look at all the materials that go into shipping products, because our operations are entirely carbon neutral. So that comes down to utilizing moving blankets a lot of the time, utilizing Velcro straps, making sure that we get those back so we can use them again, and so it's not a cost for the consumer. Not using saran wrap, which so often goes around the legs of furniture, goes around a couch, right, when it's being shipped. It also means having conversations with our suppliers and letting them know, hey, this is what we found out. Uline has this wonderful bulk deal on cornstarch packaging peanuts, for example, so you don't have to use foam peanuts. It takes a little bit of an upward learning curve, but I think that's how all good knowledge spreads, right? But it sometimes does mean a little bit more of a cost. It is cheaper to use saran wrap to like wrap a sofa and ship it across the country, but in the end, it's too big of a cost that we all bear. So utilizing solutions and then informing others of what those solutions are make a big impact.
Whitney, that's such a great point. Pia, please go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just felt that I should maybe share an example as well. I was reflecting about if I had one, but it's more related to the packaging of our transportation, the film that you wrap around all the pallets. We have at least found a way of using that film for producing spray bottles that we sell in our range. So that film, we have found a way of reuse in our own production, which is a big thing. It's in all our transportation. All goods goes with that film. Yeah, so that was more that I was thinking of more than the transportation. I'm not into the details of that, but that was at least what I could share.
Mm-hmm. You know what, Pia, I bet you all are working with some of the smartest minds in regenerative technologies. It would be so cool if IKEA could almost open source and make available some of those learnings and knowledge to the rest of us in the world of furniture. Mm-hmm. I hope that there could be, because I know you no longer have your catalog that you're putting out. That was big news recently. Yeah. So maybe the catalog could be substituted by like IKEA's open source cookbook of more sustainable ways to transact and to produce at scale, since you all are such a big wing. That would be so plant that seed today. That would be so cool.
Yeah, it's yeah, I will not super happy to say it. Yeah, we have discussed it and thinking about how we could do that, but yeah, I hear it.
We get it.
I think it's an important point that as you look to reduce waste and reduce your carbon footprint in shipping and the packaging that comes with it, there can be an added expense. So certainly, the alternatives can be more expensive than the basic, cling wrap approach. And one of the questions from the audience is, how do you make the case for circular business models to investors and shareholders who may not get it, and often, when it's the case that transition might be more expensive or impact the bottom line of a company in the short term. And this audience question notes, Whitney, that you mentioned Google Trends. Are there other data points or market research that you all use to show the value to the business bottom line of transitioning to circularity?
It's such a good question, and I'm feeling it right now because we're currently fundraising. I think it points back to consumer demand, as we've all been talking about. There's increased need for goods. There's increased searches for goods that have a foundation of circularity or sustainability. There is there's so many consumer watchdog agencies that are popping up, or even Instagram accounts that are getting followers that are just almost policing, the idea of greenwashing, which is so awesome and so needed. But I think it's still a bit early on, and I really look forward to the world of venture capital, including more social impact funds. I think we need to veer away from this mythical unicorn in the tech startup world, and instead look at, there's this term zebras, which is now the companies that will make huge impact but don't have to have those multi-billion dollar, earnings and EBITDA. So I think we're all kind of turning into a direction of like less is more, which is exciting, and we're turning in a direction of a maker economy, which is huge, and I think is ultimately going to be one of the saviors for our planet. And I think investors have to wisen up to that. There's no other way, and it's happening. This round of fundraising is going easier than my original round of fundraising for ZZ years ago. So I'm pleased about that. And there's so many more social impact funds that are out there, and so many more that are aligned with doing right for people and planet. So it's definitely a renaissance, but we need more of those institutional investors out there. So I'm optimistic and hopeful, because it is changing, and it has changed much over the last 3 to 4 years.
That's great.
I
Any other
completely
thoughts
agree
on
with
that?
Whitney. Yeah, I was going to say I completely agree with Whitney, and I feel like the business case for circularity, the business case for sustainability, it's there, it exists. Like, it's not a myth. There's a lot of research that's been done around it. There are a lot of companies that have experimented with it, and they're seeing cost savings, and they're seeing their supply chains getting more secured up, and they're seeing it as a competitive advantage as well. I think a lot of the framing, it needs to be around the long term versus the short term. Yes, there are some upfront costs, and yes, you have to do things a little differently, because circularity, unfortunately, isn't the norm as yet. Like, you do have to innovate, you do have to experiment, you do have to investigate before you can hone in on things. But the research is there, the proof is there. It's more about being able to frame that for your investors, being able to frame that for your stakeholders, to show them what the long-term benefits of this are.
And the great part is it does work, and it's all predicated on goods that last, which is so cool. And as we know, that is the world of furniture when made well.
And we have time for one last question, which is, what inspirational words would each of you say to companies who say they don't even know where to begin with circularity? And Cisco, maybe I'll ask you to start, and then ask everyone else to join in.
Well, my recommendation is to look within. Normally, we look to the outside and we see what others are doing, and which is great, but then it looks so impossible to get there. And the best way is to look in. I mean, it's the very small things that you can do within your company. Just starting to look at the waste of your own materials, and it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it becomes a huge deal to the ecosystem that we have. I remember when I just started challenging my suppliers. The main supplier for lumber refused to get certification, to get his FSC certification, and I really wanted him to get it, because we were going to go 100% FSC certified, and he refused to do it, and eventually I had to go to a new supplier, and that supplier gained a very nice account, which he was a believer, and he was doing all the sacrifices to only have lumber that it was sustainable, and he all of a sudden gained a really nice customer. So I do believe that we just have to look within and be true to yourself, and one step at a time, and learn from others little by little. You don't need to take a big bite of the whole thing at once.
That's great. And Simonella?
Yeah, I think, echoing what Cisco just said, I mean, you're not alone in this journey. I mean, you may feel like you're alone, especially as a founder, but there are so many people trying to do similar things. And so create your community. I mean, for us, the Sustainable Furnishings Council membership and that community has been so great, right? And it's helped us meet different peers in the space who are trying to do similar things and gain inspiration from them, bounce ideas off them, gain support from them. So create your community, and seriously, perfection is the enemy of good, right? You don't have to get it perfect in the first try. Just do the small things, keep going at it, and just remember why you're doing it, so that you have that goal and you have that focus in mind, and then don't be afraid to make some mistakes along the way.
That's great. Thank you. And Pia?
Yeah, it's very similar. I would say test and learn, test and learn. So really put some small scale ideas forward to our customers, and then learn from feedback, adjust, test again. So in an iterative process, really start up that way. And I think, as you say, you're not alone, and I think there's no one in the world who has solved circularity on a scale anyways. It's really, we are all in the same boat, whether we are big or small or new or startup. So, but for me, the main thing is talk to consumers, listen outside in what is in their aspirations, dreams, wishes, and then put an idea, a prototype, or a test to and include consumers to feedback, and then learn slowly, and then suddenly you know what to do. So it will evolve in an iterative way. That would be my recommendation.
And Whitney?
Yeah, similar to what everyone else said, I think it's all about the little victories. It can seem like such a gargantuan task when you set out and you think about where you want to get, and it's just the little victories add up to a big resounding movement. I'd say also empowering others, as Pia described, empowering your community, asking your audience, asking your team, asking your employees, like, hey, let's have a feedback form. You can input your name, or it can be anonymous. Like, what should we do? What can we do better? How can we improve? What have you seen other companies doing that's making a good and resounding impact? And then, also I think just taking the time to recognize, like, as described, good enough is good enough. Like, it's hard. Perfection is just is so ambiguous, and perfection is just oftentimes prohibitive. So what is good enough for now? Celebrating those victories, celebrating that good enough work, and just keeping your ears and eyes peeled for ways to improve. Listening as well.
That's great. Many thanks to all of our panelists today, and to our hosts, and to Circular City Week. Thanks for joining us today. You'll see that an evaluation form will pop up on your screen. We encourage you to fill that out so that we can get your feedback. And I look forward to continuing to hear about all of the amazing work that each of our panelists and their companies are doing. So thank you so much for your time and for joining us today. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.